Very good. I give it one more moment. Very good. Well, thank you. It looks like everybody's coming in, and we'll just kick it off right on time. I want to say good morning and thank you so much for joining us for this very important, very timely event. I'm Peter Howe, speaking on behalf of the New England Canada Business Council. I know we are all looking forward to what's going to be known as the post-COVID era, and certainly to our border reopening for business and travel at long last, one of these months. Je veux dire aussi bonjour et merci beaucoup à nos amis québécois qui sont à bord ce matin. Nous sommes heureux de vous accueillir aujourd'hui. It's about all I'm going to be able to do for you in French, but give it a shot. And I want to introduce our host this morning, Dean Sharma, in just a moment. But first, on behalf of NECDC, I want to be sure to express our deep thanks to our generous sponsors this morning, the Consulate General of Canada in Boston, and our new Consul General, who is very quickly becoming a very good friend of New England, Mr. Roger Cuzner. La Délégation du Québec à Boston, the Quebec delegation. Thank you, Marie-Claude Francoeur and your staff. Our event partners, the Vermont Chamber of Commerce, University of Vermont Grossman School of Business, and Northern Vermont University. The Honorable Timothy Egan of the NECDC board and the New Hampshire legislature has played just an absolutely key role in putting together today's event, and with some tremendous support from our board members, Jim Kish, the CEO of Passumpsic Bank, and Jim Roach of the New Hampshire Business and Industry Association. Also, Susan Barber of McKenna Management, which provides tremendous support to the council on managing everything we do, including this event. Finally, I also want to very quickly recognize and thank several other members of NECDC's board who are with us this morning. Our amazingly hardworking president, John Sorensen, and from our board, Lindsay Cook, Jim DeVellis, Len Gold, John Gulliver, Tom Kent, Ben Schwartz, Marshall Sugarman. If I've missed anybody, I'll mention you at the other end. So finally, on behalf of the New England Canada Business Council, our huge thanks to all of you who've sponsored and brought together today's event. And now, Dean Sharma, it is my wonderful honor to introduce you to lead our event.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everyone, to the forum, USMCA, an asset in the Green Revolution. I will tell you a little bit about myself and then introduce and welcome our distinguished panelists. After introducing all our panelists, I will then call upon each panelist to deliver their remarks. Sorry, is that somebody was speaking? I will then call upon each panelist to deliver their remarks on the topic of the panel. We hope to have some time for discussions and questions from the audience toward the end of the panel. So as Peter introduced me, my name is Sanjay Sharma. I have been the Dean of the Grossman School of Business at University of Vermont for almost 10 years now. Prior to that, I was the Dean of the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University in Montreal and the Canada Research Chair in Organizational Sustainability. It is a distinct pleasure to moderate this panel as a proud dual US and Canadian citizen who believes in the tremendous potential of dialogue, collaboration, and partnerships between business and government in leading to meaningful public policy solutions to amplify green business opportunities and innovation to address our common sustainability challenges. We hope that this panel will generate ideas and insights for fostering such partnerships. Our keynote panelist is Congressman Peter Welch. He has been a champion for working Vermonters throughout his career. He was elected to the US House of Representatives in 2006. His record reflects his strong commitment to bringing people together to find common sense solutions to the difficult challenges facing our state and the nation. He has worked across the aisle to create jobs, increase access to affordable education and healthcare, invest in energy efficiency, protect our environment, and care for our veterans. Thank you for taking the time to join us, Congressman Welch.
Thank you very much. Hey, I am so excited, and I can't wait for this to be in person and not virtual. Uh, but the world has changed on January 20th. All right, and I want to not talk political, but I want to say that it was so wonderful to see President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau having a virtual meeting on February 23rd. It was wonderful when I had an opportunity to speak to Roger just recently. Um, and good things are starting to happen. You know, what we've always known in Vermont is that our Canadian brothers and sisters are our closest trading partners, incredibly good neighbors. And we've had a tough time the past a few years. I mean, starting with the out of nowhere tariffs on aluminum and steel. So it was a real disruption, because what we've had in this state especially is just a constant feeling of goodwill and engagement with our Canadian counterparts. And, you know, it's everything from this wonderful border that we share, where in the old days, kids would play hockey across the border, and there'd be no big deal about going here and going there. And it was integrated into our communities along the northern border, that they had good friends in family connections with folks on the Canadian side. And we want to maintain that as best we can in this world. But also the commerce between us has just been essential. And you know, I I was dismayed when the authority that was used to invoke the aluminum tariffs was, quote, national security, because most of us in Vermont were unaware of what an imminent threat Canada was to our national security. So we're happy that we've sort of gotten it right at this point. And we know, and you know, our the Canadian folks on this call, is that it's mutually beneficial for us in every single way, that we have the maximum ease of commerce, the maximum ease of social back and forth. And it's important for us, Vermont, in everything from our ski areas and our tourist visits to our ability to go up to Canada and enjoy all that is offered there. But it's especially true for business. You know, we have in Vermont, we export. You're our biggest business partner in nearly $1 billion a year. A lot of that is microchips, which, as you know, are growing increasingly important, particularly in the new economy, where we're hoping to have electric vehicles. And the demand for chips is just going to continue to increase. So Canada is our major export market in Vermont. And of course, we import actually more than we export from Canada. And a lot of what we import is energy. And of course, that's clean energy with Hydro-Quebec. And in Vermont, we're pretty proud of the fact that our electric grid is largely carbon-free. You know, it's renewable energy. And of course, Hydro-Quebec is a big contributor to that. So that we're on the right track now. That's really what is going on. With COVID, it's an incredible disruption for all of us. And all of us have had to do everything necessary to keep our families safe, our workers safe. And of course, it's been very, very painful, the impact that's had on cross-border communication and travel. And really, really a hardship for some of our families, where one partner lives on the Canadian side or works there, and another partner lives on the US side. And all of us along the northern border, my Republican and Democratic colleagues are doing everything we can to urge the president to move forward on trying to establish a way to ease that pain for families and have the capacity for reunification. So the bottom line here is I feel really, really good about the new direction that we're in. And everything that I've seen from my Canadian counterparts over the years, I served in the state Senate for a number of years. and of course, been in Congress a while. But the unifying theme here in the state of Vermont, whether it's a Republican or Democratic governor, is that we've got to do everything we can to enhance our relationship with Canada. And it's on commerce, it's on business, on families, and it's just on the well-being of all sides. We have a lot to learn and benefit from our Canadian counterparts, and hopefully Vermonters are likewise contribute to you. You know, we on maple syrup, of course, think we're a bit better than Canada, even though you may produce more. But we think ours is tastier, but that's an ongoing debate we can continue to have. So it's really wonderful to be here. And I thank Peter and I thank Tim and Sanjay, I thank you, and I appreciate all the work you're doing at the business school on behalf of Closer Ties with our Canadian brothers and sisters. So thank you all very much. It's wonderful to be part of this gathering.
Thank you, Congressman Welch, for your remarks. I just wanted to ask you a comment on a couple of issues. So the U.S. administration stated policy of Buy American. What's your perspective in terms of what sort of will it facilitate or hinder collaboration and partnerships between U.S. and Canadian businesses around green energy and green innovation?
Well, you know, that's a work in progress where we've got to be very, very closely connected. The focus on Buy America, you understand that. Buy Canada, I'd understand that. There's been a depletion of our manufacturing jobs in this country, reduction in good paying jobs, and we want to get them. And Buy America, obviously, is one way that President Biden is signaling that. On the other hand, all things are not equal. In our relationship with Canada, in the back and forth in commerce, where some things are partly manufactured and then assembled here and vice versa, there's a real integration in the Canadian-American, in particularly Vermont economies. So the Buy America has to be defined in a way that's mutually beneficial, where the goal for us, and should be obviously for Canada, is you want to have a strong economy with good jobs, or they do. Sandy, thank you. But on the other hand, we want to take into the practical realities of how supply chain works, and how the connection between Canada and the U.S. is not one where either side is trying to exploit cheap labor. Okay, that's been the big real problem that's had such an impact on so many of our communities in the United States. We have mutual interest in addressing issues like climate change, like labor standards, like environmental quality. So there is, I think, much more room to be practical in defining how this works between us and Canada, where the challenges that the economy here have faced with low wage pressure are not really a result of what practices exist in Canada. So I think we've got to stay in real close touch on that, make sure it works out to mutual benefit.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for your comments and the clarification. I will now welcome our next panelist, Roger Kuzner, Consul General of Canada to the US. He has served as a member of the Canadian Parliament from 2000 to 2019 from Brador in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. He also served as Parliamentary Secretary to former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, amongst other posts. In Parliament, Roger focused on matters related to veteran affairs, fisheries and oceans, workforce development, and national labor issues. Incidentally, Consul General, having lived for 5 years in Halifax and spent many summers in Cape Breton, I cannot resist a plug here to our audiences that have not visited Cape Breton, which is one of the most special and beautiful places on earth. So thank you for taking the time to join us, Consul General. I look forward to your remarks. we have the Consul General? Have we lost him?
I saw him show up for a moment. Let's give him another minute.
Okay. Otherwise, you might have to take over, Mark.
Exactly, yeah. Well, let's not waste time. If he pops in, I'll start with Roger. I see you now. Okay, well, why don't I start, and hopefully he can become the professional and deliver the comments better than I am. In any case, apologies. My name is Mark Jacques. I work with Consul General Cuzner at the Consulate General of Canada in Boston. And for the moment, Roger? Doesn't sound good, so I'll start with our comments. So first
Mark,
and foremost, Roger, I am here, yes. Are you clear? I guess it's probably best if I continue, Dean Sharma.
Yeah, I think so, because connection seems really bad.
Yeah, well, perhaps he'll be able to join at least for the Q&A after. In any case, I'll begin. So we'd like to talk a bit about the recently implemented USMCA, a great example of our countries working together to provide a stable and progressive footprint on which our companies can successfully create unprecedented economic growth in North America. As all of you on this event know, no two nations depend more on each other for their mutual prosperity and security than the United States and Canada. We are bound together by our history, our values, our economy, our environment, and our resolve to improve the lives of our citizens. We both continue to benefit from our longstanding foreign policy and security cooperation, longstanding trade agreements, resilient supply chains, our shared commitment to fighting climate change, and the North American integrated energy market. As one great example of the strong bonds between our countries, Prime Minister Trudeau was the first foreign leader to congratulate the president-elect on his election and the first foreign leader to have a call with the president. As we've seen, this COVID pandemic has most certainly been a roadblock to the economics of our countries, and dealing with this issue is a priority for all of our leaders. Canada has taken an evidence-informed approach to this pandemic, trusting science to lead the fight. Our health authorities have been the backbone of our efforts to protect our citizens. As we build back from the pandemic, we can look at the new US-Mexico-Canada free trade zone to health. It is the biggest economic region in the world, encompassing a $22 trillion regional market of more than 480 million consumers. And this agreement, which received bipartisan support in the United States, preserves key elements of NAFTA, modernizes provisions to address 21st century trade challenges, reduces red tape at the border, and provides enhanced predictability and stability for workers and businesses across the integrated North American market. While it provides certainty and a path forward to strengthen our economies, we have to be careful about policies which sound politically expedient but come with very important negative unintended consequences. And one such example are Buy America policies. Local content requirements such as Buy America initiatives negatively affect long-standing cross-border supply chains, putting at risk US and Canadian jobs, distorting investment and resulting in higher prices for businesses and consumers. As one local example of the unintended consequences in New England, the Department of Public Works in Auburn, Maine waited for weeks for a waiver to purchase specialized ductile iron pipe fittings for manhole hinges made in Canada to be used at an ultraviolet disinfection treatment facility. While waiting, Auburn was forced to purchase steel plates to cover exposed holes. As expected, the EPA eventually granted the waiver on the grounds that no domestically manufactured pipe fittings were available to meet the project construction site schedule, but this delay should not be the norm for the most successful bilateral trade relationship on the planet. It's critical that we minimize the impact of local content requirements on Canada-US value chains and ensure mutually beneficial economic growth. To move on to that concept of the supply chain, the cross-border supply chain is one of the strongest examples of our integrated economies. We're each other's most trusted suppliers for effective, safe, and reliable inputs and manufactured products. COVID-19 has revealed common concerns related to the manufacturing and procurement of essential supplies. Since the beginning of the pandemic, our countries have closely collaborated to maintain the two-way flow of medical supplies and critical inputs across our border. We must continue to work together to strengthen our medical supply chains and address vulnerabilities. While the border will be closed until at least April 21st, we are all well aware of pressures on both sides of the border to reopen to to non-essential travel, particularly as we move closer to the tourism season, which is so important to the economies of Quebec and Vermont. Experts in the political and commercial fields are actively considering all options possible, including a group from the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C., comprising former politicians, diplomats, and business leaders from both sides of the border. They understand that our trade relationship is built on long-standing binational supply chains, networks of workers and businesses that aren't just trading goods, but making the goods together for use at home or around the world. And they all grasp that opening our borders will be an important step towards rebuilding our shared economies. Before I close, while our colleague from Quebec will provide much more detailed information on electric vehicles and clean energy programs taking place in Canada, I'd like to briefly mention the federal government's plans for electric vehicles and clean fuel standards. Transportation accounts for a quarter of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, of which almost half come from passenger cars and light trucks. The government of Canada is steadfast in its conviction that the electrification of Canada's light-duty vehicles, as well as a shift to cleaner fuels, are key to the decarbonization of our transportation sector. In fact, Canada's strengthened climate plan, a healthy environment and a healthy economy, highlighted that building a stronger, cleaner transportation system as Canada recovers from the pandemic is an investment that will pay off, delivering economic and environmental benefits for decades to come. That's why the government of Canada set ambitious federal targets of zero emission vehicles, reaching 10% of light duty vehicle sales by 2025, 30% by 2030, and 100% by 2040, and has invested over $600 million to help make zero emission vehicles more affordable and structure more accessible. Funded through Budget 2019 and the 2020 Fall Economic Statement, the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program is a 5-year, $280 million program ending in 2024, and its objective is to address the lack of charging and refueling stations in Canada, one of the key barriers to ZEV adoption, by increasing the availability of localized charging and hydrogen refueling opportunities where Canadians live, work, and play. In regards to clean fuel standards, in late 2016, the government of Canada announced that it would consult with provinces and territories, Indigenous peoples, industries, and non-governmental organizations to develop a clean fuel standard to reduce Canada's greenhouse gas emissions through the increased use of lower carbon fuels, energy sources, and technologies. Environment and Climate Change Canada published the draft Clean Fuel Standard Regulations for liquid fuels in the Canada Gazette. It would require liquid fuel producers and importers to gradually reduce fuel emissions intensity, aiming for a 13% decrease in carbon intensity below 2016 levels by 2030. It would also establish a credit market that will give suppliers several compliance options, including carbon capture and storage and purchasing credits from biofuel producers. Jet fuel and fuel destined for export would not be subject to the standard. These are slated to take effect in December 2022. In closing, I'd like to thank the University of Vermont, the Vermont Chamber of Commerce, as well as the New England Canada Business Council for organizing this event. And I hope that we will all have a better understanding of how our further partnership will result in the stronger economies and cleaner economies on both sides of the border. On behalf of our Consul General, I thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mark. I'm wondering if Roger has managed to come on, and if he has.
Sanjay, just quickly, and I want to thank Mark for jumping in like that. I've got a quick line here anyway. I'm really hoping that the president's investment in infrastructure that identifies high-speed broadband access makes its way to Wellesley. Listen, the relationship between the two countries is paramount, and it's deep, and it's the most important trading relationship probably in the world. And USMCA has brought benefit to all three partners. Peter, you absolutely hit it right on the head when you talked about some of the provisions in there around cheap labor. And I think one of the greatest benefactors of the agreement was Mexico, with the provisions in there that both US and Canada fought for on the labor front and on the environmental front. You'll see that through the manufacture of auto parts. It really levels the field, but it makes them comply with both the environmental and the labor regulations. I think that's important. I'll close with this because we got a great program ahead, but there has been a sense on our side that there's an opportunity here to do some really good things and some important things. And there's an atmosphere of responsible thought and action. And so on the environment, on the economy, I think that there's great potential. So I'll close on that. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you, Roger. And while we, this is one of the few forums where we'll have, very senior representative of the U.S. government and the Consul General of Canada. So I have a question for, and either one of you, whether Congressman Welch or Consul General Kusner, you can address, or both together. It does appear that both administrations now have similar goals in terms of emissions reductions by 2030, 2035. They're pretty similar goals. And we know that, climate change doesn't stop at the border. We share the same atmosphere, the same air. Are there any discussions ongoing or any plans for cooperation around emissions reduction or cap and trade or emissions trading, etc., between the two countries? You are muted, Peter.
I'll start on that. Absolutely. I mean, the whole point of Secretary of State John Kerry, former senator, former presidential candidate, one of the most respected members of the Democratic Party, being appointed as the climate ambassador is an acknowledgement of what you just said. And that is, this has to be a cooperative effort. Otherwise we fail. So we succeed together or we fail together. And the benefit of course, of starting with Canada is that we are aligned in our interest, at least now. So the answer to that is yes. I mean, the more we can cooperate, the more we can do together, the more we can adopt common standards, the better prospects for success all countries have. Roger?
Yeah, Roger, do you have any comments?
If he's not able, I can jump in quickly.
I think his connection is bad, maybe. Mark.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the great... I think the best example of this type of partnership, Madame Francoeur was certainly raised this, but Quebec's cap and trade system is already linked with California's.
I'm still connected.
We certainly see that there can be benefits to bilateral collaboration, given the integrated nature of our economies and energy systems, as well as the long history of collaborating on environmental and climate-related issues. So as the Quebec-California program has gone off to a great start. So we think it would be an incredible idea to continue collaborating with our colleagues in the federal government.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And sorry, Roger, we are still not able to hear you clearly. Maybe, we hope by the time we get to a discussion, you will be. And maybe it might be a possibility for Roger to call in on his telephone rather than trying to, there is an option to call in with a telephone rather than trying to link into the video feed. So that might work for you. Thank you, everyone. So our next panelist is Ms. Marie-Claude Francoeur, who has been the Quebec government delegate in Boston since May 2014. Ms. Francoeur formerly served as Assistant Deputy Minister for Policies, Multilateral and Francophone Affairs, amongst other posts in the Quebec government. Throughout her career, she has worked to shape and promote Quebec's policies on climate change, labor, transportation, energy, and Francophonie, both at home and internationally. Welcome, Madame Francoeur.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Charmant, for the introduction. Chers amis, bonjour. I use the word friend because this is truly the depth of Quebec's relationship with Vermont. Yes, of course, we are great economic partners, but our bond runs deeper than that. We're friends, and truly, we're a family. We share a border, we share the same air, the same water, the same soil, and it's only natural that we work together on promoting our common prosperity and benefiting both our regions, as well as our respective workers and their families. Strengthening relationship with the United States is at the core of Quebec's priorities. We firmly believe in free trade and in the complementarity and interdependence of the Canadian and American economies. In these uncertain times, North America's economic recovery will depend on trade policies that support innovation and enhance our competitiveness against global competition and protect our integrated value chain, one such as the USMCA. Companies on both sides of the border need to use the USMCA as an asset for our common fight against climate change and our quest for regional economic growth. It is fundamental to educate ourselves and study the components of the agreement and the potential advantages offered by the USMCA to businesses on both sides of the border. According to a study done by the Canadian federal government, 30% of businesses cannot identify the changes for Canadians resulting from the treaty. As a government agency helping companies export to the US, we have to be creative in our approaches. Sometimes, sales from Canada using the US's distribution system will be the best way of penetrating the market. In 2018, commercial exchanges between Quebec and Vermont reached 3 billion Canadian dollars. Other times, the implementation of Quebec companies in the US will be the best way to proceed. More than 30 Quebec companies have a Vermont subsidiary, directly securing over 2,400 American jobs. A recent example is PCM Innovation Group, a leader and integrator in the engineering, designing, and manufacturing of tooling solutions for the aerospace industry, which acquired Lucas Industries. Lucas Industries specializes in precision aerospace tooling and has unique expertise in the machining of composite parts for helicopters. The new division operates a plant in Springfield, Vermont, keeping those 45 jobs in the state. Today, I will discuss two opportunities provided by the USMCA to continue and expand our business regional cooperation in the fight against climate change. The first is the growing electric vehicle industry, specifically the battery powering EVs. In Quebec, we do not build cars, as you know. We do, however, make electric buses, trucks. Soon we'll be making snowplows, electric snowplows, and now snowmobiles and jet skis. The company making those snowmobiles and jet skis is Taiga Motors. They just went public over a month ago, and they were able to raise over $100 million to start their businesses. Bombardier also announced last week that by 2026, there would be an electric model for each of their recreational vehicles. As the world makes the shift to EVs, it will be increasingly important for our economy and for our respective security to have a supply of strategic minerals that are used for batteries. Quebec is fortunate to have the natural resources needed and the clean tech knowledge to build EV batteries from the conception to the recycling, with each step of the process powered by clean power. The EV revolution is only as clean as the electricity used to power the vehicles, and we must also look at the sunk cost of carbon in the battery and other components. Fortunately, USMCA's new rules of origin encourage battery production in North America, increasing regional content requirements to 75%, compared to NAFTA's 62.5%. This is in addition to including new provisions on wages and specific thresholds for steel and aluminum that seek to further stimulate North American manufacturing. For the first time, USMCA includes enforceable provisions on the environment, Chapter 24, and specifically identifies 7 international climate treaties for the parties to commit to full implementation of each country's commitments. Democrats in Congress are encouraging the Biden administration to add the Paris Agreement to the list. All of this presents an opportunity for us to build a clean, secure battery industry right here in North America. Aluminum is another example of a strategic industry covered by the treaty. 7% needs to be produced by US, Mexico, or Canada. Quebec is among the world's largest aluminum producers, and our aluminum is clean, made with clean hydropower. Thanks in part to investments made by the Quebec's Green Fund, Rio Tinto recently unveiled a first in the world traceability system. It's called START. START's transparency, traceability, and provenance through blockchain technology provides customers with the sustainability credentials of each shipment of aluminum, allowing for a better informed supply chain. It's like the nutrition label of the aluminum industry, empowering you to make a more sustainable choice. A Vermont audience, of course, does not need me to delve into the benefits of hydroelectricity. Thanks to its decade-long relationship with Hydro-Quebec, Vermont has one of the cleanest electric grids in the United States and has been able to grow its domestic renewable industry with the backing of that clean baseload generation. As economies around the world consider adding a carbon tax at the border, the clean nature of many Quebec's products will ensure that North America's supply chain can compete in a global stage that increasingly values sustainability. As other panelists have already mentioned, we need to be aware of collateral impacts of Buy America initiatives that would go against one's own interests. This summer, the federal government under the previous administration imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum. It did not take long for our Vermont partners to react. The Vermont Chamber, the aerospace component manufacturers, Congressman Welsh, they all opposed the tariffs. And Governor Scott, along with his colleagues from Maine and New Hampshire, also voiced their position through a letter to the federal administration asking for Canada's exemption to be restored. Again, we work together. We build things together. We fight together for the prosperity of both of our populations. I am so much looking forward to continuing our work together across key sectors of common interest, including trade, regional economic development, water management, and of course, the fight against climate change. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie-Claude, for your comments and remarks. And thanks also for emphasizing that, Vermont's green energy revolution is in large part due to the partnership with Hydro-Quebec, the hydropower which Vermont buys. So we will move on to our final panelist today before we have a discussion. Final panelist is Brett Long, the Deputy Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Economic Development. Brett is responsible for communicating with the state's larger businesses to ensure that they avail themselves of the many programs that are available from the department. In addition, he oversees the department's economic development programs, workforce programs, and business recruitment activities. Welcome, Deputy Commissioner Long.
Thank you, Sanjay. Good morning to everyone. Appreciate the invitation to be here today. From the perspective of the state of Vermont, there's often a tendency to focus on the international trade relationship, but as others have referred to this morning, that's really only a small part of the relationship between Vermont and Canada and Quebec in particular. It's just as important to look at the other aspects. For example, I think one of the most important aspects is the fact that we have such an integrated supply chain where we have lots of products that are going back and forth across the border during the manufacturing process. It is important that we make sure that we foster rather than hinder that process as we move forward. I certainly don't want to diminish the nature of the trade relationship. It's obviously important for Vermont. Over 40% of Vermont's exports go to Canada. About 4% of Vermont's workforce is supporting this export activity. We have major sectors that are involved in exporting to Canada. Somebody referred to earlier as computer and electronic products, paper and paper products, and food manufacturing. But as I said earlier, I think it's really important that we focus on the fact that those semiconductor chips that I'm referring to in the computer products are actually things that are going back and forth during that manufacturing process. And it runs to everything from semiconductor chips to wood flooring. We often get involved in conversations with folks about that process. So we certainly are focused on it. We want to make sure that we're doing all we can to support that process for all of these cross-border manufacturers. It's also interesting that these manufacturers are headquartered on both sides of the border. So there are efforts on behalf that we're taking on behalf of companies that are located or headquartered in the US or companies that are headquartered in Canada to do what we can to foster that. It's also important to recognize the import of Vermont as a toehold or beachhead for Canadian manufacturers looking to expand their operations in the US. Every year we have not a huge number, but a good number of companies that come to Vermont and establish operations as they look to expand their U.S. operations. For us, it's a great partnership. The businesses tend to be smaller businesses. They oftentimes are family-held businesses. They're a great complement to Vermont businesses. They share a lot of the common values and common principles. And we do all we can to support them. We'd love to continue that flow, and doing anything that inhibits that is obviously not in the interest of Vermont. You know, one of the fascinating things is that the nature of many of those relocation or location decisions is that these businesses can establish an operation in Vermont and still be able to go back and forth between their businesses in one day. It's also important to focus on the aerospace business in Vermont. As Delegate Francoeur mentioned, the aerospace sector is important to Vermont. Vermont is a part of the corridor of aerospace manufacturers that runs all the way from Quebec down through the rest of New England. There's also reference to the PCM transaction. That's one of many smaller aerospace precision manufacturers in Vermont. And we certainly want to do all we can to foster their ability to continue to grow and prosper. And oftentimes that means developing new capabilities. It's one of the things that we try to do in our department. And the access to additional capital from partnering or being acquired is potentially something that can help these companies to develop those capabilities and continue to grow. Also want to focus on the renewable energy sector. As people have mentioned, that's an important focus for our state. It's an important capability of our state. About 6% of our workforce is involved in the renewable energy sector. And about 65%, actually a little over 65% of our electricity comes from renewable sources. This is the largest share of any state. And obviously, a large part of that is the fact that we have such a great relationship with Hydro-Quebec. But in Vermont, we still have a lot to do to improve our carbon footprint. You know, there's a long way to go to achieve our goal of 90% of energy from renewable sources by 2050. I think the transportation sector is certainly the governor's focus in trying to improve that. And I think there are important relationships that are yet to be explored with Canadian counterparts. We've had inquiries from folks from Quebec, businesses from Quebec, that are interested in helping us to expand our electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We've had inquiries from folks that are interested in the potential for alternative fuel depots for trucks in particular. So going forward, I think that there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of opportunities in the renewable sector. And, you know, again, we have such strong common goals and interests that I think it's likely that we should be focused on trying to deepen our relationships going forward in renewable energy. You know, one of the companies that's been interested in establishing an operation in Vermont is a company called iSun. They make solar charging structures. For example, something that you would use as a carport and would have solar panels in it. They established an operation in Vermont. They started to expand, and then they were acquired by another Vermont company. A great example of the kind of relationship that can be developed. All of this it illustrates the interwoven nature of our international trade and supply chain relationships. It's one that's been built over the course of decades. We consider it critically important to the future of Vermont. And what we're looking for is trying to deepen those relationships going forward. One of the things that we realized recently is, you know, we in our department focus on trying to hire interns each year. And it occurred to us, well, you know, if we want to deepen our relationship with Quebec, let's see what we can do about trying to engage interns from Quebec in our department so that we can deepen our understanding between the two countries and the two economies. So, From our perspective, I think USMCA is very important. I think in the Buy America context, it's important that we view the US-Canada Mexico pact as something that sets us apart from the Buy America relationship with other countries. I'd like to thank everybody for the invitation and thank all of our presenters for making this event possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett, for your remarks. So on behalf of the Business Council, is there one request that you have for Congressman Welch and for Consul General Kushner to take back to their respective federal governments to facilitate what we are trying to do here, green businesses, green innovation? Is there one big request that you have for them? Sorry, Brett.
I'm sorry, were you asking me in particular?
Yeah. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking to count the.
No. I'm asking you on behalf of the Business Council because you're the business person here. So.
Yeah, the point I was really trying to make in my comments is that we have a great relationship. It's a very long, deep relationship, and we should be careful about doing anything that would imperil that relationship. Certainly from Vermont's perspective, we work very hard to try to improve and further develop the relationship. So, I think by way of what I'm saying is to make sure that we're not going to be adopting any policies that would imperil that relationship going forward.
Great. Thank you, Brett. I want to give our panelists an opportunity to respond to any of the comments made by anyone on the panel or to add to what has been said at this stage. If anyone wants to add anything or to comment on what other panelists have said. Okay. In that case, I think we'll just open this to Q&A from the audience. And there is a question that has come in. I believe, although it says Stephen Gillis, but I believe it's Peter Howe who has asked this question. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and ask this question live?
Actually, we apparently all are Stephen Gillies. If we didn't change our name, but this was a very thoughtful question. I wished I had asked about how important rare earth metals are going to be for batteries in electric vehicles and other technologies as energy storage becomes more and more important. And a question really, I think, for all the panelists, do you see ways that the US and Canada might better coordinate how we ensure a reliable and robust supply chain for rare earth metals that will be important? And in particular, are there opportunities between New England and Eastern Canada to do what we can to source those locally, from be it from Quebec, be it from elsewhere?
I can answer that. The Quebec government has just launched its plan for the North. And one of the big aspects of that is to be able to harvest all these great strategic minerals that are necessary for the production of the battery. So as you know, most of the North is protected. There are some areas that will be areas where we will be able to get those minerals in order to be able to provide our allies with materials or minerals from North America. So that will all be part of the chain, and there will be business opportunities for businesses to go up north in order to work with the companies that will be developing and working on those minerals.
Likewise, this is Mark again. Congressman Welch, after you, please.
No, go ahead. After you.
Thank you. Is Roger on the phone? Okay, then, so in 2020, Canada and the United States finalized a joint action plan on critical minerals collaboration. So by advancing this joint action plan, we are joining forces to secure access to the critical minerals, including uranium, rare earth elements, and those needed for next generation batteries that can play a key role in our economic recovery post-COVID-19. And Canada is an important supplier of 13 of the 35 minerals which the US has identified as critical, including aluminum, uranium, potash, and graphite.
You know, your question is why it's so essential that we have ongoing communication to achieve our mutual goal of climate emission reduction, You know, it's a very practical question, and we know we need access to those. We know that it's beneficial to our shared objective of reducing carbon emissions that Canada have access and the US have access. And that's why having someone like Secretary Kerry is so important, because it sends that signal that this is not a zero-sum game. You know, that's got to be the attitude going into this, that if folks are seeking to get access to those materials that will enable them to achieve our shared goal of reducing carbon emissions, and let's figure out together how we can meet the needs that both countries have. So thank you for that question. And it reinforces that point that the essential cooperation that we all share as a goal be achieved.
Great, thank you. There is a question from Tim Egan, and he says it's more relevant for Brett or Marie-Claude. And he says, can the auto industry follow the success of aerospace industry in Vermont?
The auto industry as a manufacturer in Vermont? Is that the idea?
I don't know if Tim is here, but this is what he's
Yeah.
probably is the collaboration between Quebec and Vermont in the aerospace industry, and with Vermont doing a lot of the outsourcing work and the component work.
Yeah, I would certainly pass along the information that we are frequently getting inquiries about Vermont as a place for doing precision manufacturing with respect to renewable products. And autos are included in there. So I think there probably is a future for us. And it probably is an area on which we should be partnering going forward. You know, that there's likely to be a huge change in manufacturing as a result of Industry 4.0 principles. And, you know, it's certainly the case in Vermont. I'm kind of assuming it's the case in Quebec, that the COVID pandemic has made the problem much worse. Our precision manufacturers are clamoring for workers, and it's really difficult to find them. So I think and the supply chain has been tested during COVID. So I think it's quite likely that we're going to see an accelerated development of Industry 4.0 principles and technologies, so that robotics and artificial intelligence and additive manufacturing are all principles that are all techniques that are likely to come into much more use. And these are technologies that are difficult to understand and expensive to implement. And frankly, the more that people can understand how they work and apply to their businesses, I think is to the benefit of everyone. We're actually the fiscal agent for a grant where we're trying to introduce businesses, manufacturing businesses across New England to these various technologies. And maybe it's something we should be exploring with Quebec as well.
I agree. We do have this corridor, this AI corridor between Montreal and New England. And the first stop obviously is Vermont. So this is something we can definitely work on together. Quebec does not produce or make cars, Ontario does, but we've picked up the ball for buses and trucks and EV and ATVs, jet skis, and so on. So all the fun things. So that is, and we do have a very good cluster. We have been investing in clean tech for a while now, since 2006, since we first started levying fossil fuels. So that did give us some means to be able to move forward some of the biggest pieces in our fight against climate change. So with that, we were able to create 45,000 new jobs. There's 15,000 more coming. And we're also working with our state partners, Vermont and New Hampshire, in order to see also, because our population are aging. And, you know, maybe one day you can have someone who works in Vermont and in Quebec, or in New Hampshire and in Quebec, and not have to go through immigration processes, but just mobility. And I think that this is a comment for Congressman Welsh. You know, mobility and immigrations are two different things. And even though USMCA does give some kind of leeway to business people, it may be a time to start considering other dimensions, like people that will have gathered training and could be of help for businesses on both sides of the border. So instead of having a job on one side and a job on the other side, we have one person covering the two. And that will also help with our ties. So if at any point you need someone on a committee to work on that, I'd be more than happy to take part in this.
You know what? That's a great idea. I mean, it's practical. And the goal here is to provide mutual benefit to the enterprises on both sides of the border. And that is a really good idea. And I don't see why we can't do it. So yes, I'd like to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, I've always felt one aspect, one industry in Quebec that most people don't know about is the video gaming industry. So, you know, Quebec fostered the video gaming industry a couple of decades ago, and it is very significant. It's pretty big. And, you know, that is in many ways a non-polluting, non-industrial kind of enterprise. And I think there's great potential for biotechnology, for genomics, for robotics, as Brett mentioned. And Vermont is a place that, you know, people like to live and work in. So, you know, these are all industries which are digital, and people would love to work in Vermont, live here, and be able to, you know, work in these kind of industries. So, Congressman, you know, this is probably where the future of Vermont lies, beyond the craft beer industry and, you know, the aerospace components that we do. I believe there is one quick question before we, to honor everyone's time before we close. And this question is about speed limits on heavy trucks in Quebec and Ontario to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. Are these speed limits still in use? And I don't know if anybody can answer this.
I'll take that. I was in the Department of Transportation when that became law. So that was one of the low-hanging fruits that the Quebec government put forward, one of the policies to reduce GHG emissions. So basically, you do have something on a truck that forces the truck driver or to go at a certain speed limit. So it did two things. And we partnered up for Ontario because you have to do this with two large provinces since there's a lot of traffic going back and forth. So Ontario's goal in doing so was to reduce the number of accidents on the highway. Our goal was to reduce GHG emissions. And in the long run, now that it has been in place, so they're called governors. So you have a governor on the engine and you turn it on once you cross the border, and then you're limited to 105 kilometers. So you have just a little bit of juice to pass if need be, but you can't go over and beyond that. The truck industry really liked it because it gave everyone a level playing field. So everyone, you know, needs to be on time, but everyone had the same regulations and they could go at the same speed. So it did two things. It reduced dramatically the level of GHG emissions, and also it reduced dramatically the number of accidents on the highway. So that was a very good measure. And then again, a low-hanging fruit, because most of those engines and those trucks are built with it. All you have to do is flip it and turn it on.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you to our distinguished panelists for their valuable insights. Thank you to our audience for their questions and participation. It is unfortunate that Consul General Kuzner had technical problems. And that is again a signal that, you know, we need to work, collaborate on technology across the border and make sure that, you know, we are able to communicate easily and freely. And I think, you know, that idea about mobility between the provinces and the states is a wonderful idea. You know, this is the largest undefended border in the world with very little security threat. So I think that is something we can make happen. And it's the start of a great dialogue between policymakers and businesses. And I hope that businesses on both sides of the border will take up this promise and work towards innovative solutions and business models to address our common sustainability challenges. So thank you again. I'm going to invite Peter Howe to wrap this panel up. Peter?
Great. Dean Sharma, thank you so much. Congressman Welch, really want to thank you for making it a clear hour of your time to join us. And Consul General Kusner, and maybe we should say Acting Consul General Mark Jacques, Delegate Marie-Claude Francoeur, and Commissioner Long, thank you. Roger, we've all been there with the internet problems, and I have a call out to Bell or Rogers to see if they can run a line down to Wellesley, Massachusetts and get you fixed up. But seriously, thank you everybody for, I think that Congressman Welch's line about the constant feeling of goodwill and engagement between our countries. It really is, as Roger said, the most important trading relationship in the world. We're all committed to it. There will be bumps in the road. There will be things to discuss, but it is a wonderful relationship for all of us on both sides of the border. And we really look forward to that border reopening when it finally does, and doing this in person. So again, on behalf of New England Canada Business Council, thank you, everybody. One last request. If you have become Stephen Gillies on Zoom, you're just asked, please check and change that before you go on to your next Zoom call so that Stephen doesn't get quizzical questions. But thank you, everybody. And we look forward again to doing this again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Great. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you, sir.
Bye now.